I've spent a lot of time lately in rooms with salespeople, leaders, loan officers, real estate agents. They really are people who are good at what they do. But I keep seeing the same thing. Most of them do not have an information problem, right? They know what to do. They've been to the classes, they've bought the books, they've listened to podcasts. They've got a CRM and a calendar and a phone full of contacts and more information available to them than any generation before. Think about it. But knowing what to do and actually doing it, they're two very different things. There's a gap between the two. And I think we spend way too much time trying to solve that gap with motivation, right? We tell ourselves we got to get fired up again. We need a goal, a new planner, a new sales meeting. Motivation is rarely the real problem. Rarely. The problem is usually that somewhere between where you are and where you want to go, a gap is opened up. And until you identify the right gap, you can work incredibly hard and still not move very far. So instead of asking yourself, how do I get more motivated? I want you to ask yourself a different question. Where is my gap? Over the last several years, I've worked extremely hard on Integrator, and a lot of you know that, right? Recently, I've started building some live classes. I have become convinced that most performance problems fall into 5 areas. I call those 5 gaps, and that's the classes we're talking with real estate agents about right now in conjunction with Union Home, is that the 5 gaps that I've identified are clarity, activity, tracking, relationships, and resets. Part of the Integrator system. What makes this important is that the solution changes depending on which gap you actually have. If you have a clarity gap, doing more activity might just make you busier. If you got an activity gap, another vision board is not going to help you. If you got a tracking gap, you may be working hard and you have no idea of what's actually producing results. And if you have a relationship gap, you can execute perfectly, but you end up hitting a ceiling eventually, right? Ladies and gentlemen, if you never reset, even a good plan can slowly drift off course. We actually talked about that last week, right? The first gap is clarity. You cannot consistently execute something that you have never clearly defined. I meet people all the time that tell me they want to grow. And when I ask them, what does grow mean? They give me a fuzzy answer. More business, more money, better shape, better relationships, more balance. Those are desires. They're not direction. Clarity actually means that you can explain what it is you're trying to accomplish, why it matters, and what deserves your attention today. Not someday, today. One of the disciplines inside of the Integrator system is actually the first one, G, get clear. That happens before the world starts setting your agenda. What matters most? What moves your life forward today, right? Who deserves your attention today? If you can't answer those questions, I'd say to you there's a pretty good chance you're going to spend the day reacting to everybody else's priorities, not yours. Busy is not the same thing as clear. A full calendar is not proof that you're moving in the right direction. The second gap I see is activity, right? Activity. This one is uncomfortable because sometimes we know exactly what we need to do. We're clear, but we simply are not doing enough of it. We can dress it up 100 different ways. We call it planning, research, prep, strategy. While all those things matter, eventually the phone's got to ring. Meeting has to get scheduled. Work's got to be done. The workout has to happen. At some point, preparation has to become action. I've told you, I've seen people spend hours, days, getting their calendar right? Organizing the activity that they're not actually doing. That's not an organizational problem. It's an execution problem. In Integrator, we call it act with discipline. Sometimes we say act with intention. But discipline and intention, that's not punishment. It's the bridge between what you said mattered and what you actually did about it. If you know what matters and your results are not changing, you better look at your activity before you blame the market, the company, the algorithm, your manager, or your circumstance. Because sometimes the answer is painfully simple. You're not doing enough of the right thing. The third gap is tracking, right? This is one of the biggest mistakes I see in business. People manage their performance by feeling. Yeah, I feel like I made a lot of calls today. I feel like I've been meeting with some people. Yeah, man, my pipeline's looking pretty good. Feelings are useful for a lot of things. They are terrible accounting systems. If something matters, you measure it, right? If you measure it, you can manage it. And if you manage it, you can improve it. Bill Cosgrove told me that. You manage it, you can measure it. And if you measure it, you can manage it. And if you manage it, you can improve it. Track the activity. Track the conversations. Track the appointments. Track the conversion. Track what happened after the meeting. The purpose, and I've told you this 1,000 times, the purpose of tracking is not to beat yourself up. It's to tell you the truth. It doesn't just tell you what you're missing, it's also telling you what you're doing right. Once you have the truth, you can make a better decision. And you may discover that you do not have an activity problem at all. You may have a conversion problem. You may discover that the one relationship, one source, one activity is producing far more than anything else. That's useful information, right? Tracking your progress is not about creating another spreadsheet. It's about replacing the assumption with awareness. The fourth gap we run into is relationships. This one sits at the heart of Integrator for me, right? Because if you remember originally, and it still does, the Integrator, the Gator portion acronym was founded on the premise that greatness is achieved through optimizing relationships, GATOR. I mean, look at almost anything that you've accomplished. There's blood, sweat, and tears. But somewhere in that story, there's another person. Somebody gave you an opportunity. Somebody introduced you to someone that created a great business or personal relationship. Somebody taught you. Somebody trusted you. Somebody challenged you. When things got difficult, somebody stayed with you. We like to celebrate individual achievement. That's just human nature. But very little meaningful success is actually built alone. Isn't it odd that relationships are often the first thing we neglect when we get busy? We stop calling, we stop checking in. We only reach out when we need something. That is not relationship building, ladies and gentlemen. That's relationship withdrawal. You're not making any deposits, you're just withdrawing. The question is not simply who do I know? A better question is who am I intentionally, act with intention, investing in, and then another one. And who is investing in me? Your next opportunity may not require another 100 contacts. It may require you take better care of the 25 relationships that already matter. Fifth gap is reset. Reflect and reset. This may actually be the most overlooked one. We spent a lot of time on this last week. You can have clarity, discipline, tracking, and great relationships and still drift, still get off course. Life changes. Man, the market, look what the markets change. Families change. Priorities change. You change. A plan that was right 6 months ago may need adjustment today. That doesn't mean the plan failed. It actually means you're paying attention. Reflect and reset is where you stop long enough and you ask that question of what worked. What didn't work? I told you, every 90 days, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What needs to change? Last week, I told you I had to do that, right? There are seasons when I feel myself getting spread across too many things: work, Intergator, podcasts, classes, the writing, life, fishing, family, friends, relationships. I live a very, very, very busy and packed life. The answer is not always to quit something. Sometimes the answer is to get honest about the heading, the direction I'm going, and make a correction. I use the captain analogies a lot, and the captain, I told you, doesn't steer at the original heading while the boat drifts mile off course. You check the instruments, you look at the conditions, you make the correction, and you keep going. Reset is not failure. It's part of the system. It's part of the system. Now here's where all this gets useful, right? Think about the area of your life or business that frustrates you the most right now. Don't pick 10 things. Pick one. Now I want you to ask yourself a question. Which gap is it? Pick one thing. One area that's creating the most frustration. Then ask yourself, which gap is it? Be honest. I tell you all the time, be honest with yourself and don't give yourself just a generic answer. I promise you this can help you. You pick that one thing, ask yourself, which gap is it? Do I lack clarity? Am I clear? Do I know what to do, but am I not doing enough of it? Activity, right? Am I doing the work but failing to measure what is happening? Tracking. Have I neglected the relationships that mattered? You know what that is. It's relationships. Or have I stayed with a plan that needs an honest reset? Do not answer with the gap that you wish you had. Answer with the one that's actually costing you, because that's where that really is where the work begins. Hey, listen, notice something else. None of these require you to become a completely different person. They just require that you operate differently. And that distinction matters, because Intergator has never been about creating a manufactured version of yourself. It's about uncovering the greatness that is already there, and then building a system that allows it to show up consistently. That's one of the reasons I'm excited about what we're building right now, right? We're going to taking these conversations out of the studio and into actual rooms with people. We got 9-10 real estate groups that we're talking to over the next couple months. It's not motivational speeches where everybody feels good for an hour but goes home unchanged. They're working sessions, real conversations about clarity, activity, tracking, relationships, and reset. Because I want people to leave with something they can use on Monday morning. And while the rooms are filled with real estate professionals to start off with and salespeople, this is bigger than just one industry, right? Think about it. You're a leader. These gaps show up in your leadership. They show up in business. They show up in your health. They show up in your relationships. They show up in every aspect of your life. The environment may be different, but the gaps do not change. This week, do not ask yourself whether or not you're motivated. Motivation is like the tide around here. It's going to come and go. Ask yourself where the gap is. And from a Gator standpoint, Intergator, get clear. Get clear. Find that clarity. Act with discipline. Act on it. Track your progress. Know where you're winning and where you need to improve. Optimize your relationships and reflect and reset. Then do it again tomorrow. You probably don't need another answer. You just got to identify the gap between what you already know is right, what you should be doing, and what you're actually doing. And start closing that gap, right? Do it one decision at a time, one conversation at a time, one disciplined action at a time. That's how progress is built. That's how separation. You want to separate yourself from your competitors? Fill these gaps. That's how it happens. And I think that's how you let the gator out of the cage, right? That's how you let the gator out of the cage. Release that greatness. I believe you have greatness inside of you. And I hope with every fiber of my being that this is helping you identify what it is that you were built, who it is that you were built to be. I hope this helped. If it did, I want you to share it. I want you to share it with somebody that you know is struggling in these gaps. But I also want you to look deep within yourself. Again, that one area that's frustrating you doesn't have to be just work. It could be life. And figure out where the gap is and fill it. Let me know how it goes. Have a wonderful week. I'm glad that you're here. I look forward to talking to you next week.